Welcome to Perfect Match
Question mark.
with Bryan Keller
And Michele Drohan.
the podcast in which we discuss the culture through the lens of tennis.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. In this episode, we will be talking Wimbledon, the triumphant victory of Carlos Alcaraz over an increasingly weird and unhinged Novak Djokovic,
Unhinged.
as well as Barbora Krejcikova's win over the fiery up-and-comer from Italy, Jasmine Paolini.
Those names are a little tough to say, wouldn't you agree?
Krejcikova.
Krejcikova, Paolini. Say it with me.
Paolini.
Krejcikova, Paolini.
Krejcikova.
I think we just did it.
We just did it. But first up, some tennis tidbits. So, the ESPYs.
Yeah, the ESPYs aired last week, and Serena Williams hosted, and she was on stage with her sister and another athlete named Quinta Bunsen, I believe. And they made a remark that I thought was absolutely fantastic and went viral. They were calling out, two things. First of all, they were trying to tell people who may be disparaging women's sports. We're seeing a real rise in women's sports, attention to women's sports, so much in part because of Caitlin Clark, which is amazing. But in the world of tennis, Venus and Serena are no strangers to success. And the fact that they're women is great.
Or controversy.
Yeah, but the fact that they're women is great. And Venus was just trying to make a point about, hey, how about we just enjoy sports, period. But I feel like maybe not everybody knows what Harrison Butker said.
Harrison Butker, a NFL kicker who recently was asked to deliver graduation remarks at Benedictine College and proceeded to lay out the kind of right-wing Trumpian trad wife, like return bro agenda around, women should know their place. Gay people they shouldn't be proud because pride is a sin. Trans people shouldn't exist because they give me the weirdest boner.
I'm not sure that's what he said. But,
that's always
that's
kind
the
of
undercurrent.
That's kind of the undercurrent. And then he threw in a bit of anti-Semitism just to round it all out.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do one, do them all.
Exactly.
But what he said was pretty egregious, and I just want to play a clip that they reported. So just I want you to hear what he said, and then hear just how Serena and Venus addressed it at the ESPYs.
And told female graduates, I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
So go ahead and enjoy women's sports like you would any other sports because they are sports.
Except you, Harrison Butker. We don't need you.
Butker was somewhere
Nice.
in the audience.
Now, clearly that first voice was not Harrison Butker. That was someone.
No, someone that was
reporting
from
it.
someone from the Hollywood Reporter reporting on this, and just reporting what he said in his speech. I don't want to hear his voice. I don't want to give him any more of a platform for his ridiculous comments about what women should be doing. I mean, there's all these women in the audience graduating college, and he has the nerve to say to them, you've been served up the most diabolical lies. And while, yeah, it's cute that you got a college education, but I imagine what you're most excited about is getting married and having babies. I can't even believe this is something that would be said out loud in 2024.
It's weird because, you don't need a degree to get married and have babies. Like these are people who are trying to perhaps build a career for themselves. And
well, it's sort of like in the 1950s, women went to college to find a husband.
Or became flight attendants.
And that's what he's looking at these women. It's like, yeah, it's great that you came to college, but I hope you found a husband. I hope you're engaged. Otherwise you failed.
Right.
So Serena calls it out. He's in the audience. I don't think they panned to him when she said this. I don't know if she planned to say it or it was off the cuff. I don't care. It was awesome. But then he had to respond. Of course.
Later, right?
Right. And his response was the typical gaslighting bullshit, basically saying to Serena, oh, I'm sorry, I was expressing an opinion. And I think sports are unifying, but you have just disinvited anyone who disagrees with you to the party, so to speak.
Right.
And this is just what Republicans do and conservatives do all the time. Like, you get criticized for saying something deeply, deeply discriminatory
And divisive.
And then someone calls you out on it and says, okay, fine, we're not interested in what you have to say. And there's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, they do this sort of thing where it's like, oh, isn't it sad how divided we are? And hopefully one day, we can all just, come together and not be so divided. But meanwhile, saying shit like, gays, go back in the closet.
Women, go back in the kitchen.
Women go back in the kitchen. Trans people, go away because you're freaking me out.
Don't exist at all.
And Jews. He also said something about Jews.
Well, we killed Jesus, right?
Well, he said like Jews. He said that he opposed some congressional bill that was making its way through Congress, which would stigmatize people saying that Jews killed Jesus. Which he's like, but that's what's in the Bible. It's not what's in the Bible. I mean, the Bible, for the most part, says that Pontius Pilate ordered the crucifixion of Jesus because Jesus threatened the Roman Empire. Jesus, by the way, who himself was a Jew, and all of his disciples were also Jews, and most of his followers were Jews. So this whole like Jews killed Jesus, what they do is they cherry pick a couple of sentences from some of the Gospels that mention certain Jews kind of being somewhat tangentially involved in the crucifixion of Jesus. I mean, I don't believe any of this stuff. I think I look at this stuff and I think it's sort of like, Game of Thrones. It's like, did it happen? I don't know. I don't believe that, lots of things in the Bible actually happened, but people do believe that.
You don't believe that Moses parted the Red Sea.
I don't believe that is or was possible. The same way I don't believe that, in Game of Thrones that, what's her name had a bunch of dragons. Like that's like not.
She gave birth to dragons.
She gave birth to dragons, right? I don't think that's true. I think it's an interesting story, and that's kind of the folklore and so on. But anyway, but these people believe what they do is they cherry pick facts from the Bible which support their own bigotry. So like, oh look, here it says there were a couple Jews who were
right, and they look
involved.
they look at their bigotry as an expression of religious freedom,
right?
And then get upset when people tell them, hey, that's racist, that's anti-Semitic, that's sexist. And then the people who call them out are the ones who are the problem.
Stop being so divisive, Michele. Exactly.
I'm the one. Women are the problem. Yeah. Jews are the problem. Yeah. So anyway, I really enjoyed that Serena and Venus, they're just the greatest. And I think I've said this before, but it's a little bit of a line from The Wire. You come at the queens, you best not miss, right? Because their success and their legacy, they're untouchable. So you're going to lose that fight.
Yeah. And I think that, Harrison Butker is not exactly a household name, and he's only become someone people are talking about because of this outrageous, like, bigoted nonsense that he spewed to the Benedictine college graduates. But on that note, speaking of misogyny.
I know. It's like,
Stefanos Tsitsipas.
We can't get away from it. Again, as women's sports are having this moment, and we've had plenty of wonderful moments, and women's sports has been so amazing and continues to be amazing and is becoming more and more. There are people like Harrison Butker. There are people like Stefanos Tsitsipas, unfortunately, who are really trying to push back, it feels like, on this idea that women can share these spaces.
Right. So Tsitsipas previously had he'd reposted this sort of trad wife video in which it portrays this sort of happy Christian couple where she's making muffins and taking care of babies, and he's like doing CrossFit and like kind of like being a man in some way. And he basically reposted this as the ideal. And, of course, he's dating Paula Badosa, who's a top 50 women's tennis player.
At this point, she's top 20. She's coming back from injury. We've talked about them before, but they are together now. And not only right after they got back together does he repost this trad wife content on his Instagram, he just last week posted some live video of them. They're on vacation in Monaco because they both lost early at Wimbledon. And he's posting them walking around to go to lunch. And he starts talking about how much she likes to eat. She likes to eat too much, apparently.
According to him.
He refers to her as hippo.
As a hippo. And
talks about how he is making her do a lot of walking to, quote unquote, earn her lunch.
Right. And, if you look at Paula Badosa, she's a beautiful woman in, excellent athlete shape.
She's insanely fit.
She's super fit.
It's ridiculous. Go on their Instagram and you can see what this woman looks like. And I don't know if he's trying to be cutesy or trolling, but the fact that he's doing this and posting it, and I don't want to put any blame on her because it's him and his fault and not hers. But then she's in this video kind of making light of it too, going like, right. Help me, ladies. And then they show them at the restaurant eating, and she's unapologetically eating, which is great. But then he continues to joke about how they have to walk back from the restaurant because she ate so much, and then made some comment about how women don't like to walk; they like to be carried.
Well, and he also made her wheel his luggage up the hill so that she can work off her lunch or whatever it is.
This isn't cute. This isn't funny. And again, you and I have little jokes between us sometimes. I have just
not about weight.
No, I'm just talking about eating. Just FYI, I have uncontrollable urges when I'm around salty snacks like potato chips in particular.
Yes,
and
I have to control.
And I have made a joke how keep these away from me. It's a joke. And I
have uncontrollable urges when I'm around food, generally,
and alcohol. But that's okay. And sometimes I help you control those urges. But the thing is, it's an inside joke between us. And we're talking about it on this podcast in this context, but what I don't do is post videos or talk about this in a way that, I don't know, it's keep it to yourself. It could be some cute inside joke between the two of you, but then when you're so famous and you have a lot of influence, posting that, I think, does just a ton of damage. It doesn't really make Stefanos look any better.
No.
Coming off the heels of his trad wife post.
All of it screams of he is a controlling monster who is basically conducting an abusive relationship with this woman, Paula Badosa. And it's this idea of I'm going to tell you how much you can eat. I'm going to tell you what you should weigh. I'm going to tell you how much you need to work out. She's a professional fucking tennis player with a team of people, a coach, a physio person. He doesn't have any fucking involvement in that.
He should just be celebrating her and the fact that he gets to be with her.
Yeah.
Period.
He's a ridiculous person.
In the words of one of our guests, Kathy Luby, who commented on the Trad Wife video when we had her on, her advice to Paula Badosa was
run.
Exactly.
Agreed.
And we are doubling down on that.
Absolutely. Okay, Wimbledon finals just ended this weekend. It was amazing. On the women's side, you had Barbora Krejcikova, who beat the up-and-coming firebrand Jasmine Paolini. I mean, she's not up and coming in terms of how old she is. If you see her, she looks like she's 18 years old. She's 28 going on 14.
She looks so young.
Yeah,
and because
really young.
she's diminutive.
As you are.
Shout out to the short girls out there.
I think you guys are about the same height.
Well, she's 5'3". I am 5'4", by the way. That inch matters. I am 5'4".
I always...
Stop it.
I question that.
No, I'm 5'4", God damn it.
And I'm 6'3".
You are.
So we like to say we're in a size queer relationship. I don't know if that's a thing or if that's okay to say.
I have no idea if that's okay to say.
We
are almost a foot apart.
Yeah,
in height.
It's you know what they call it? They call it climbing the tree.
Okay, babe. Right. Let's take it down a notch.
Anyway.
So Jasmine Paolini is 28, but she's had this breakout year. She was in the finals of the French Open.
Yeah.
She lost to Iga. No shame in that. Iga's the best.
Iga's the queen of clay.
The best clay court player and number one in the world. And she had a great run, and she ran into, in the final, a woman that probably nobody who's listening has ever heard of.
Barbora Krejcikova. Big doubles player. She's also won a slam previously.
Yeah, in singles, this is her second Grand Slam. She's won 10 other slams in doubles. She's from the Czech Republic. And, sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, where you see this is not necessarily the blockbuster final that maybe the broadcasters were looking for. I
don't think ESPN was super happy to have a Paolini-Krejcikova women's final.
Right. But then if, you hear the stories, and I just want to tell a little bit about Barbora Krejcikova because she's a Czech player, and when she was up and coming in the Czech Republic, she learned that there was another Czech player who had won Grand Slams and was a famous tennis player, but had since retired. And her name was Jana Novotná. And Jana Novotná was a player in the 80s, and she got to the Wimbledon finals, and this was one of the most remembered and well-known Wimbledon finals because she lost to Steffi Graf, but she was up 5-1 in the third set. And she just fell apart. She fell apart. I mean, it was really, really painful to watch. And I remember seeing this as a teenager when I was watching Wimbledon. During the trophy ceremony, if any of you have watched a Wimbledon match and seen how the trophies get handed out, it usually involves someone from the royal family. Yes. And you saw Kate Middleton come out and give Carlos Alcaraz his trophy.
Super awkward.
But also nice to see her because she's fighting cancer.
Right, true.
And so when Jana Novotná lost that Wimbledon final back in the 80s, and she got handed her runner-up trophy, she burst into tears. And the royal family member who was doing this, and I don't remember who it was, but comforted her. And Jana Novotná cried on the shoulder.
Of royalty?
Of royalty.
Oh, my God.
I mean, you're not supposed to touch them, right?
No.
You're not.
You can sort of shake hands
there's
and curtsy.
all this protocol. And it was this moment that everyone was like, wow, this is so touching and meaningful, but also like weirdly shocking.
But also humanizing for the royal family.
Absolutely. The great thing is that Jana Novotná came back a couple years later and redeemed herself and won Wimbledon. She then became Barbora Krejcikova's coach. When Krejcikova and her mom knocked on Jana Novotná's door one day to meet her in the Czech Republic, Jana Novotná opens the door, welcomes them in, and becomes her coach. The sad part is Jana Novotná died of ovarian cancer.
Yes.
And so knowing this story, knowing that Barbora Krejcikova had, endured this great tragedy.
And as she was dying, I heard them say she told Barbora, go out and win a slam. Mm-hmm. And so now she has two.
And I think her winning Wimbledon specifically, because that's where Jana Novotná had these great moments of her own career, it was just really nice. And I don't think a lot of people know that. So while it wasn't like the Coco Gauff versus, Sabalenka final that maybe we all wanted, sometimes when you hear a little bit about the backstories of these players, you can get really invested. And I was ultimately very happy for her.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't the world's greatest women's final ever, but it was good. And I think we should keep an eye on Jasmine Paolini because she's got such a great spirit, great attitude. And I think
absolutely she's going to
be back.
She's super fun to watch. And I think people like to see her energy and her enthusiasm. And she's very emotive.
Emotive, fiery, small. She runs around really fast. And she's
great. She's great. And we'll see more of her.
Yeah, half Italian, half Ghanaian as well.
That's right.
But on the men's side, we had good versus not so good. Carlos Alcaraz versus Novak Djokovic.
What do you mean good versus not so good? Amazing versus terrible.
Amazing
I mean,
versus
what are
terrible.
We talking about? We can't stand Djokovic.
I don't want to beat up on the loser here, but he was such a dick the entire time. I mean, the sort of antics and childishness and unsportsmanlike behavior that he displayed in the second week of Wimbledon is noteworthy. I mean, this whole thing where, he's always had a weird relationship with fans in which fans generally don't like him and he really desperately wants to be liked, but then he does things that make fans dislike him even more.
Well, you can't make someone like you.
No,
right?
And
whether it's in professional sports or even relationships.
Yeah.
right?
Or in any kind of public facing role. Like I liken Djokovic in a way to like Elon Musk.
Right,
Where
right.
Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He controls SpaceX and Tesla and He's got all this money, and the only thing he wants is just people to like admire and like him, and he cannot have that because he's such a ultimately loathsome individual, and he also has zero charisma as well. He tries to be funny. Djokovic tries to be funny. They don't understand funny. They don't understand why people laugh. Neither of them laugh themselves.
What do you mean, neither of who?
Elon Musk or Novak Djokovic.
I see. Okay. Right. No, that's true.
Neither of them ever laugh themselves, right? I've never seen Djokovic like truly laugh in a full-throated
I'm sure
way.
he laughs, but he also...
Does he?
Well, I think what you're trying to say is the two of them are trying to force people to find them funny or find them likable or get respect out of them. Anything that he lacks this kind of genuine ability to be a human being.
Right. And which is what Carlos Alcaraz has in spades. I mean, Carlos Alcaraz just smiles and you just want to just like take him home with you and just like feed him some tapas or something. I don't know.
Wrap him in a blanket.
Whatever it is. You want him to be
bedtime story.
You want him to be your friend. You're like, oh my God, this guy would be so awesome to hang out with. Novak Djokovic, on the other hand, is just this constantly on guard, paranoid weirdo. And what he did...
let me just say, he's come up in an era where he was facing and beating the two most beloved tennis players of the last 20 years, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, and breaking their records.
Right.
And so that's a tough position to be in. I will grant you that. But there's also a way to do it. I mean, Nadal beat Federer's record in a way, and no one went around saying, Nadal, we hate you, you're an asshole.
Right.
Djokovic came up and he had this kind of like shirt ripping, chest pumping, I don't get the respect that I deserve. I'm going to scold you.
Yeah, he's got his chip on his shoulder, kind of right. This like the right wing, red pilled bullshit, and it's.
Yeah, he also refused to be vaccinated during COVID. So there's so many things about him that are problematic. So what happened during Wimbledon?
Well, so he was playing Holger Rune, the Danish player, and beat him. But during that match, the players were chanting Rune, Rune, which has happened before in matches between Djokovic and Rune. He called out the crowd for what he thought when people were chanting Rune. He heard those as boos. But see, we've been through this before, right? This has happened before, and everyone has explained to Novak Djokovic, no, they are just rooting for Rune in the way that they do. And he said this to the crowd. This is after he won the match, I believe, in straight sets against Rune.
Yeah.
And he said this to the crowd, I guess, to kind of like show them who's in charge.
And to all those people that have chosen to disrespect the player, in this case me, have a good night.
Ha ha ha.
Again, trying to be funny.
Yeah, isn't that clever?
So
How he
clever.
did that?
Good night. Very good night.
And you can hear people booing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they were just commenting on Rune and that they weren't disrespecting you. They were. I don't accept it.
I don't accept it.
I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's an excuse to also boo. Listen. I've been on the tour for more than 20 years, so trust me, I know all the tricks. I know how it works. It's fine. It's okay. I focus on the respectful people that have respect, that pay the ticket.
All right. So, yeah, I know all the tricks. It's
I know.
the paranoia.
I know.
The level of paranoia.
What you didn't play is at the end of that clip, he said, don't worry, though. You can't touch me. You can't hurt me. That's how he ended that interview after he beat Rune. And it's this dichotomy of saying, like, you don't bother me, you can't touch me, I've been here before, but also I'm going to scold you and admonish you at the same time, and I'm going to walk around with a chip on my shoulder. So which is it? Are you okay with it and you can't touch me? Or do you have to go out and be like, I'm going to tell you all the things that you're doing wrong? He can't
It's also distasteful.
He just can't figure out who he wants to be.
Right.
And he can't help himself. He can't help but scold the crowd. It certainly didn't do him any favors at Wimbledon. I mean, this is not how you get people to root for you.
No, and I don't know if people ever noticed this, but there is essentially no Djokovic merchandise that anybody wears. There's a couple of like crazy Serbs and stuff who show up with a Serbian flag, and they've got whatever knockoff merch that's out there. But when Rafa Nadal, like the bullhorns.
Yeah.
People like, half the stadium might be wearing that.
Yeah.
Roger Federer with his logo, with the RF logo, like people really buy into that. Novak Djokovic doesn't have that. And he has the best record in tennis, and yet nobody wants to buy his crap. Nobody really fucking likes him.
I know.
Because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
And the other thing that he did repeatedly in the second week of Wimbledon was he started doing this thing when he would win his matches in straight sets usually, and then he would take his tennis racket and start to pretend to play it like a violin, and then look at the crowd, like glare at the crowd and play this violin as if to say, and he would also kind of run his finger down his cheek as if like mocking a tear dropping from his eye.
Right.
As if to say to the crowd, ooh, boo-hoo, pity party for you because you don't like me, and I won anyway, like fuck you. And so people then like called him out on that and said, hey, like that's maybe not going to get you a lot of fans. Like that's not exactly a respectful thing to do. And of course, then in the ultimate like gaslighty posture, he says, "Oh, you thought I was doing that at the fans? Oh no! You see, my daughter, who's 8 years old, has just taken up the violin, and I'm so proud of her that I want to play the violin for her. You monsters! It is utter nonsense. It's complete bullshit. If you watch the video replays." He is doing it to the crowd. He turns to all four sides of the stadium and plays the violin at them. The daughter's only in one box.
She doesn't know what's going on. She's in the stands reading a book, for God's sake. She doesn't know what's going on. And two other things that I want to mention, though. When he was playing Alcaraz, and the match was not necessarily competitive, Alcaraz won in straight sets. It was pretty amazing in my eyes. But there was a moment in the third set where Djokovic was starting to make a comeback, right? He lost the first two sets, 6-2, 6-2. And then in the third set, he's trying to make something happen. And the fans want to see more tennis.
Right.
So the fans, who normally are all for Alcaraz because he's so joyful and wonderful and he's an amazing player and he does amazing shots, they start rooting for Djokovic really, really hard every time he wins a point.
They're just rooting for another set, basically.
But this is exactly what was happening during the Rune match. It was a straight set affair, and the crowd was trying to get Rune to play better so they could see more tennis.
Well, I mean, I think there's also that it is true that nobody likes Djokovic.
I understand that,
so,
but here's the thing: in the final, if they really disliked him as much as he thinks and says, they wouldn't have tried to cheer him on to even see more tennis. They just would have said, I mean, I've been a Federer fan and watched him demolish people. And I don't care if I would have been fine if 6-love, 6-love, 6-love. I don't care how much I paid for that ticket. But people who are actually rooting to get more tennis, they decide who they root for in that moment. And they were giving him crowd support, but it didn't matter.
Well, the most that Djokovic can really muster is just crowd support for another set. I mean, he's never going to have he's poisoned the well. He's never going to have a big fan base like Rafa or Roger Federer.
But no, he's not. But I also think he's being very nitpicky because I've been to the Australian Open and there is a big Serbian crowd down there. There's a big Serbian population and he gets plenty of crowd support. So it's just like you do get it in certain moments. Maybe you're never going to be Roger Federer, but does it make any sense to just do this at Wimbledon and scold the crowd and then walk around just being like someone who's just aggrieved and with a chip on your shoulder?
It doesn't make any sense, but this is what these men do.
And I just want to say too that Jimmy Connors was a guy back in the 80s in the 70s and 80s where, he wasn't looking to make friends. He didn't people thought he was, pretty much an asshole, and he was, and he didn't care, and he embraced it. And that's who he was. He's like, I'm here to win, and I don't care. And, his legacy is just fine.
Yeah, but this isn't the 70s anymore, and this is these type of people, Elon Musk, Novak Djokovic, they want the one thing that they can't have, which is to be loved and admired, and it's never fucking gonna happen for either of them. So,
I mean, Novak Djokovic did then go on the BBC to have an interview during Wimbledon shortly after this match, and because the interviewer just asked about it, he got up and walked out of the interview.
I know. It's just
But then I saw John McEnroe come on and defend him, saying he deserves respect. He's broken all the records. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible. And again,
I never understand that argument. We all agree on the stats. Like we know facts. That doesn't, like, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. It doesn't mean that everyone has to love him.
I know.
Djokovic has the best stats. It doesn't mean, not only that they have to, it doesn't mean that people are going to like these unlikable people.
Right. And as a tennis fan, I don't have to like anybody I don't want to. I don't have to. I get to do what I want. And this idea that you're going to force me into respecting and liking Djokovic just because of his record, it's just never going to happen.
That's sort of a kind of coming from a professional tennis player and celebrity perspective. Like, oh, people just should like people even who are unlikable. Like, that's not how it works. It just, whether or not that's should or shouldn't be true,
I know.
That's not how it works. So,
I know.
So
but
anyway,
let's end on a really positive note and talk about how amazing it was that Carlos Alcaraz did the great thing.
Yes. Thank you, Carlos Alcaraz.
He is a
Carlitos.
beacon of light, a beacon of hope.
I love him
He beat
so
the
much.
bad man at the French Open when he beat Zverev. He beat the bad man at Wimbledon when he beat Djokovic.
It's so good to have somebody who's that good, who you can believe in, who's also like seems like a really good person.
Exactly. And this was his fourth Grand Slam final, and he's won every time he's made it. He's 4-0 in finals. I just predict great things for him.
Me too. And his confidence was much higher. I mean, he could be a little all over the place as a player.
He can. But
like when he gets in the zone,
he's the kind of player, and I think we've said this before, that is going to get like the casual fan excited about tennis.
Absolutely.
To tune in. And I can't wait to see him at the U.S. Open because he didn't get to play last year because of injury.
Oh, right.
But I think it's hard to say that he's not the favorite coming into this.
I think he's absolutely the favorite on the men's side. Carlitos Alcaraz is the future. Hopefully Novak Djokovic is the past.
Yes.
Hopefully Novak will not be able to win more slams if Carlos is in the mix. We'll see.
Oh, and I forgot to say that the other thing that Carlos Alcaraz did, respect, he prevented Djokovic from tying Roger Federer's record of most Wimbledon titles. Roger has 8. Djokovic has 7. Alcaraz denied him, and I think he will continue to deny him and keep Roger's record intact, which ultimately to me is the most important thing.
So yes, on that note, Roger Federer's Wimbledon record stands. Novak Djokovic is an asshole. Carlos Alcaraz is the future. This has been Perfect Match.
Question mark.
Follow us on social, give us 5 stars on your podcast app, and stay tuned this week for our midweek mini that we're starting to release in the middle of the week, a little short.
Yeah, we're going to be
injection.
talking about the Serena Williams docuseries on ESPN+.
Yes.
So come back and listen.
See you then.